Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. There's a video that PearlyThings did called Single Mother Calls Herself Traditional. And basically, it's pretty horrendous, the comments. And video is full of ignorance. But Pearl says something along the lines of, fuck your happiness. When you get married, it's not about you anymore. It's about your kids. Now, I want to really dissect such a horrific statement like that, because PearlyThings is going to be getting closer to 30, that would be 27. She's never been in a relationship longer than 2 years. She said this on the Whatever podcast a few days ago. Okay. And so she has very little experience with marriage, with how things fluctuate, how the desire can go stale sometimes, or just how you can get in a routine, or how you operate when you live with a man and how the dynamics change. And she's never gone through pregnancy and had to be with a husband, seeing how that goes. She's never had to recover from childbirth and deal with the husband and see how that goes. She's never had to deal with a colicky baby and had to deal with a husband. So she's lacking in so many aspects. And the fact that PearlyThings constantly advocates for cheating to be accepted within relationships if the man has money and whatnot, you can clearly, really clearly, that is, see that she doesn't really know what she's talking about, and she's not being honest, and she's not being nuanced. Because if you have a mother who is full on miserable, she's not going to have the energy to be nurturing and loving. When you are deeply unhappy, you wallow in misery. You radiate unhappiness. You start letting go of your appearance. Depression swallows you, and women can crumble. They can crumble. I remember my grandma was unhappy when my mom was growing up, and she slit her wrists. My mom tried to do the same thing. She tried to slit her wrists and was passed out on the kitchen floor. And when I look back and see how when women are in very unhappy situations, some try to choose the route of self-elimination and their children discover it. So, my grandma stayed in a relationship she was not happy in. My mother at that time was a single mom, and she chose that. So I have two examples in my life to look at how misery and deep unhappiness really can lead women against their own nature. See, what's so disgusting about PearlyThings is that she gets men to really hate women. And I think her content is very sinister and evil, because she likes dunking on women, and she's, okay, let me put it this way. She's doing the pick-me strategy. She's repeating everything men want to hear, but they're not going for her because she's just desperate. She's not very beautiful, and she seems tired, and she herself is career driven and had sex before marriage. And so the things she's dunking on these women for, she herself is approaching that. And as soon as she gets married and the guy cheats or dumps her and she has kids, she will see, oh, you could go to your parents, you could go find another way out without having to stay with him, and she might change her whole philosophy. That's why so many women have said about Pearl is, you'll see when you get married if it's easy or not. And the most unhappy marriages that become sexless are those who stay together just for the kids. And there are lots of children who wish they would have had parents. And there are those who wish their parents would have just separated so they could stop fighting, so they could stop hating each other. Or their parents just don't talk to one another, and so they never really get to see parents who had affection towards one another. So their parents lived together. They didn't separate and move on with their life, but they could see there was no love in the home. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And that's the true discussion. I'm happy that my mom didn't stay with my father and sent me to live with my grandparents. But my grandma did not want to stay in her relationship, but she did, and she's still there, and it's been years upon years. But her depression really got to her to a point where she neglected her health. She wouldn't shower. She almost appeared to give herself dementia. She just stopped caring and gave up. And even though my grandpa loved her, you could just see that there's a fault in the marriage. And they stayed together for tradition. They didn't stay together because they actually liked each other anymore. And so, when I compare how my mom's just an ex-stripper cat lady who's had 6 abortions and was addicted to crack, you can see how that obviously fell apart as well. But my grandmother was not a good mother to my mother, even though she was in a household as a stay-at-home mom and had plenty that she could fix, but she didn't fix it. And so when Pearl tries to reduce and trivialize misery in a home, you can tell she just has no wisdom. Because forcing people to stay together when they absolutely resent one another and pretending that that atmosphere is not going to be so thick that you could slice it is bizarre. Have you ever gone into an office room after somebody just got done arguing? It's very awkward, isn't it? You can kind of just feel the ice in the air. You just feel the tension. It's pumping through people's veins. And it's not very welcoming, right? Go to a restaurant and if the servers are all pissed off, instead of smiling and content, or at least professional, you're not going to want to sit in that atmosphere and stew because it's not very welcoming. If you want a house to be welcoming, you can't have it saturated with hatred, anger, vice, malice, all the negative emotions. So when Pearl says, fuck your happiness, stay for the kids, is that healthy for kids to see a mother who just hates life and wants to kill herself? And Pearl thinks depression isn't real. She's part of those red pill morons. She thinks therapy doesn't work. She also complains why women are on a lot of pills and whatnot. And it's quite sad because so many solutions where people have to repair their lives, Pearl doesn't really look at. It's not easy to deal with the pain of just being with someone to be with them. Because you have to... Okay, let me put it this way. A lot of women will develop alcoholism because they don't love their husband anymore, so they hide alcohol, they get drunk just to endure sex. They just have the bills paid. And then those moms, they teach their daughters to go out and get a career or to be a gold digger so that they can get taken care of because they don't want to have to suffer and stay with somebody who they don't love. Now, Pearl came from a family that had stability, so she's not very aware of what it's like to grow inside of a home where the mother and father really just don't get along. I remember being at my cousin's house and both his parents were alcoholics and they'd be screaming and shouting and fighting and crying. I watched them get whipped with a belt, like the abuse, the horribleness. And Pearl will say, well, I don't want people to stay over abuse. But Pearl makes traditional women synonymous with being a carpet. So Pearl thinks that traditional women, which this supposedly hints at religious traditions, which she contends that they allow adultery, they don't leave because of adultery, they turn a blind eye to adultery, they expect adultery if they marry a wealthy man, they shouldn't expect to not be cheated on, and that if they just have a bunch of materialistic items and they maybe spend a little bit of time with the kids, that's good enough. It's absurd. So she makes traditional women appear to be doormats, carpets, rugs, where men can just scrub their feet on them and disregard their emotional state and well-being. It would be quite fascinating if, when Pearl is older, that she has a daughter who is so unhappy that she takes that razor blade and does Parmesan cheese to her arms. And then Pearl recognizes, oh, Maybe I shouldn't have just told all those women just to suck it up and deal with the emotional decay within their mind, within their very soul, within their being. Because if a bird will pluck out its feathers or a dog will chew on its foot, you will begin to see that when someone is absolutely horrendously broken, their psychological state is going to start to break. Either through drugs, which doesn't help the children, shopping, which can get you into debt and cause financial arguments and screaming, causes adultery, which is not good, unlike how Pearl frames it as some type of pornographic fantasy, and women will try to delete themselves. They'll induce a pill-fused coma. Basically what I'm trying to get at is the coping that women will do. That's a slow process just to endure staying with someone that makes their skin crawl would surprise many people. And a lot of the men who are supporting Pearl, they don't have actual wives, and they don't really seem to care about their mother's well-being, I think. Because their mother didn't complain about the misery, they think everything in their parents' marriage was fine. And they hate women who escaped. It's almost like these men want to have women they can abuse to the max and know in their heart, oh, she won't leave. She got no money, no job, she's fully dependent on me. I'll just give her a nice scarf and a purse, and the dumb bitch will sit right there and take care of my abuse, and I don't have to be a good man. And I don't have to actually do things with her. She just got to take it because I'm the high-value man. So if you look at the rhetoric they use and what would be the consequences, they think that they're championing healthy, happy families. But how can a family be healthy if you say, fuck your happiness? Which is what Pearl said. She literally said that. So why didn't Pearl stay with her fat guy she was with, who wasn't even handsome? Why did he not stay with her? Why didn't he say, oh, fuck your happiness, Pearl, stay with me? Why didn't they work it out? Why didn't Pearl marry him before having sex with him? So Pearl's kind of a walking hypocrite, and she's lecturing women who actually had to say, hey, you know what, we tried, but it's just not working out. Because if you think about it, you're only on this planet for a very short time. Such a short time. None of us know when we're gonna die. And you have to feel sorry for the women who are just wishing their husbands would die. That's a scary thing. Why would a man want to keep a woman in his house who no longer loves him, who hates him, who wants him dead, who thinks about other men when they have intimacy, and who is just hoping he gets hit by a car? Is that healthy for kids? See, sometimes people can pick up on just the visual things. The kids may say, oh, my parents are together, but you can see they're not hugging, they're not talking. At the breakfast table, they're just kind of isolated and atomized. It's not a warming and welcoming environment. And that hurts kids as well. A traditional woman wants to find someone she's compatible with, and sometimes that compatibility can fade. And you can hold on for dear life, but if it ain't working, it ain't working. You know, you can only hold on to the horse's tail for so long before it kicks you in the jaw. If you're holding on to a dog's tail and it turns around and bites your hand, you're the idiot for keep pulling the tail. If it don't want you, it don't want you. Don't touch it, don't touch it. It's just fascinating how much Pearl enjoys making money by making these childless males feel so entitled to just get away with treating women horrendously without actually physically abusing them, right? If a woman left a man and divorced him, she has her reasons, and she doesn't have to justify, if she's in front of an extreme judge. If some woman wants to get rid of you, you let them go. You can try to make it work, but if she's like, no, I don't want to be with you, it's done. Let it go. I know so many men that if if they're honest with themselves and they say, I want to let go of this woman, how much convincing can that lady do to really get you to stay? When a man's mind is made up and he doesn't like seeing her face, he's not pleased with seeing her around anymore, her voice makes his skin crawl. If she came to him and was pleading with him, after a certain point, once the door is shut, the door is shut. And then he's just looking for a way out. You can't lecture somebody into loving you, caring about you, and supporting you. You can't lecture somebody into making them desire you. The chemistry has to be there for it to be a healthy, happy home. And if the two parents are not being able to reconcile their differences, let them be free. Let them be free. We often fetishize and idealize the nuclear family. We want people to stay together, but at the same time, if a woman decides, or a man, he can't handle it anymore, he has to escape, he has to get out of the relationship, who are you to claw on their back and try to chain them to somebody who they want to run away from? Let them take their chances in this world, and maybe that's the path that Allah has destined for them. There are probably a lot of people, if they thought about their exes and they're like, dang man, I'm so glad I left that person, like, oh man, they would be very surprised if somebody tried to force them to go back to that individual and stay with them. Sure, you can have your long lost love, but at the same time, there's millions of people who are like, oh, what was I thinking when I was with that person? I was so stupid. What did I see in them? There's all this regret. So their life became better once they left somebody. And that is a fact. That is a fact. And so we cannot sit here and say, fuck your feelings, be traditional, and you're supposed to live in misery. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. That's not very loving. And there's a lot of women who actually hurt their babies because they resent their babies because they didn't want to stay with that man and be with him. And we have to think about the safety of the children. It's a rough life for a single mom, but if she's a good woman and she gets remarried and the stepdad isn't a creep, good for them. Good for them. We should help people find new people to marry. We should not doom them to a life of misery because we feel that the red pill philosophy knows all there is about what life means on earth. It's just quite sad. Really quite sad. There's going to be some justice for what PearlyThings is pushing these men to do. It's very radical. It's very radical when you look at it. But I think she'll learn the hard way once those men get married and they realize all the bullshit Pearl taught them didn't make sense and that she's a clone of Fresh and Fit and that she doesn't really know what she's talking about and she manipulates statistics and whatnot. I think that will be a good time for atonement, for repentance for her. Because traditional women, in Pearl's definition, really have a miserable life. Pearl's definition of a traditional woman sounds like hell and would really create a lot of feminists, and rightly so. Pearl makes she makes traditional woman look like a very miserable lifestyle by the way she tries to sell it. It's like Pearl doesn't know how to talk to other women. She's not trying to convince women, she's trying to scare the shit out of them while, getting men hard on, yeah, we're going to do all, we don't need to do this and we can cheat and she has to be a pure virgin and she has to be this, and they have all these demands, and then these men are going to be sitting around waiting, and they could have had a good enough woman, but they're like, nope, no, I got all these options, and eventually, when they're tired of waiting, they're going to meet someone maybe and be like, oh, I guess all that propaganda that I learned in the red pill philosophy section really wasn't as bad as I thought in terms of you being just a regular person, some divorced woman, some divorced man, right? And so I really hope some women have happy marriages and don't endure the hell that is a dead relationship. Totally painful. Totally painful. Happiness does matter in a marriage. Because why the hell would you want to... If people quit their jobs because they're not happy doing it, why would you make people who hate each other stay together and then have a home filled with hatred and misery and fakeness? Because the truth is going to come out anyways. The mother's going to tell when she's on her deathbed, I don't make my mistake, I was so unhappy. And the kid's going to be like, oh wow. I mean, you can talk to plenty of people whose parents didn't like each other and they should have got divorced because they made the home so uncomfortable to live in. I mean, come on, man. PearlyThings should really be ashamed of herself. And the men who are buying her bullshit, I mean, real scumbags. Total scumbags.